recorded January 17th, 2024. Good afternoon, Andrea. Good afternoon, Roderick. How
Good
are you?
afternoon.
It is an afternoon, isn't it?
If you're from the South, according to who you talk to, 5 o'clock is evening, just like you have supper. You're not having dinner, you're having supper. So, um, it's a funny time. I think it's evening because people started drinking earlier and earlier. Because I remember happy hour were 6, and then it's 5 and 4, and next year happy hour will be at 3 o'clock. The way we're going around here. But good to see all of you. Andrew, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I was just had a chat. Just had a team meeting where we were talking about getting certified for uh, co-pilot for security. And I know certification, I think, is one of the things we're going to talk about today. So that was a nice synergy there. But otherwise, I'm okay.
It's yeah, it's that what you just did. It's God, I don't fall into the whole January's renewal thing. My wife does it. To me, the first of the year is February. It always been for 10 years, more than that. It allows all that stuff in your ear about I'm going to turn over a new leaf. What was wrong with the old leaf, right? And all this other stuff. So, but I noticed your I noticed your handle halfway through dry January. How's that working out?
Well, I will say, considering my dry January really did not start till I got back from my trip, which was only a few days ago. I'm really a few days into dry January because I figured Paris didn't count. I mean, you got to have a glass of wine in Paris, uh, but I'm already,
Being it.
I will say the two things when I'm feeling frustrated I want to do are have a drink or eat sugar. So I've already been tempted to do both of those things.
Drink, yes. You sort of know me, sugar. If you and I were traveling for business, you always talk me into eating the more sugariest thing in the world. Well, the ice creams are this big, or help me drink $40 flutes of champagne that I'm drinking like Gatorade, and you're like, yo. So um, I don't do drink dry January. I'm a person that believes in cold turkey evolutions are bad for you. So I'm sort of doing a damp January. I'm
Damn
damp.
January.
I'm damp, and I'm cutting back, right? Because nothing tastes good
That's where
anymore.
you kind of soak your clothes in alcohol, right? And just
No, you just sort of
soak it
pour it in
like
your hand.
through the skin. Yeah.
You get to smell it. Even my wife's surprised. She's like, "You haven't bought any beer or anything?" I said, "Once it's exhausted in the refrigerator, I'm at that point where it doesn't taste good. And if it does taste good, I'm not gonna. I got beer now though, because this is my favorite beer, and once that's gone, I don't have any more. But anyway, enough about us. Rod, what's up with
Us.
you with
So
the with the
speaking of
with
dry
the dead
January,
the
I thought
dead t-shirt?
everywhere. Oh, you like that? My favorite people call me G-pop. That's my grandpa name. Um, Speaking of which, anytime I travel, I don't know who knows this, but if you go into one of those little news shops, where they literally have everything, they've recently started putting little tubs of Hot Wheels. So I've been picking up like 4 or 5 Hot Wheels every trip just to bring home to the grand boy, and he just loves it. He's like, God, G-Pop brought me some. But I will tell you that in the San Francisco airport, they had 0 Hot Wheels. I don't know what's up with those people. Probably $1 Hot Wheel would have been like $50 in San Francisco. I don't know. Maybe that's why people don't buy them
Probably
there.
probably because those people are not putting Hot Wheels, candy, and toys in an unmarked van and trolling the streets.
Yeah, they might.
I don't know what you're doing. Hot
Yeah.
Wheels. You want
Um,
those airport junk collectors.
but speaking of dry January, I thought every January was dry because I live in Ohio and it's so cold and the atmosphere in the house is so dry. I mean, my skin is just
My
gross.
skin my
Yeah.
skin is dying too, man. I got the humidifier going and everything. Um, yeah. So to our listeners, I know this sounds like the useless banter that we sort of start off with. I don't think we'll ever change, but we had guests. Unfortunately, the guests fell victim to unscheduled priorities, and they apologized profusely. And they're going to come back. We could have got one, but I think the guest that we have requires both of them to be here at the same time. It's sort of like, can't have Batman without Robin, or stuff like that. But
It was like one of those
uh,
ventriloquist acts, I think. So.
yeah, it doesn't come off well if you don't have the little dummy right there, right? You seem weird talking to
Yeah.
yourself. I do it all the time though. Um, yeah, this has been a slow week for me. I go through phases where well, my new role doesn't allow me to really get super deep like I used to into touching the technologies, but um, I had some stuff going on. But when I did have free time between, we'll talk about the studying piece. I've been playing with Let me go back a little bit. I've been playing with Adelon, and then I've been playing with Microsoft Cloud App Security. I'm playing with Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. So that's what I gave you all the names, right? I was testing something out, and someone asked me, and then I ran across some stuff that's pretty cool. I did not know, and it sort of lead into what you and Andrew are going to talk about. It seems like it's the thing. The shiny thing is bringing everything into it. AI and it's the technology black hole. It's sucking everything into it. Once you cross the event horizon, you cannot get out of it. You're sucked into it, right? And
Yeah.
but I get it now. I think I was a contrarian just because I would always like saying, well, that's not going to be a thing with Copilot. It's not going to be a thing with AI. It's not going to be a thing. I give up. It's right. It's a thing. It really is a thing.
Yeah, I think more and more. I think even myself initially, I'm like, what can this thing do? But the more you get into it, and the more you see the results. I was in a discussion on LinkedIn earlier today. One individual said, "Hey, I saw a Security Copilot demo recently, a live demo." They said live demo, which I know it wasn't, but live demo, and it wasn't that impressive. Well, we control those demos. We control what people can see and what capabilities are available before GA. So I will tell you that there's some significant capability here, particularly from, and I talk about this. So last time I saw y'all was on the Wi-Fi for the plane as I was traveling to San Francisco. Tried to get on, and of course, you know how plane Wi-Fi is. But I talked about it at San Francisco last week. I'll be talking about it in New York next week. How Security Copilot, from a developer standpoint, is kind of like the best of breed that we're developing at Microsoft right now, because we have, at least I think initially, 150 or more Copilots at Microsoft, something like that, which is
Are you
super
embellishing?
annoying. I don't think I'm embellishing. It's super annoying but the thing is, this thing caught on so quickly. Every team wanted to create their own, and so the code doesn't even match, right? So, but what we've been doing with Security Copilot is kind of creating a more uniform, extensible AI platform that literally anything can plug into. Which we'll talk more about that sometime in March or so.
It seems as though, and you and Andrew are the AI and Copilot experts on the team. Brody and I have admitted we need to catch up because our jobs are not so. Copilot's not eccentric in our job. This is what you guys do, right? So we're on the fringe of it, trying to consume it as best we can. That touches our role, and but I said, let me start from the basics. So Andrew, I think sort of soft accused me of not reading your newsletters a few weeks back, but I'm not gonna hold any shade. I went through and just sort of read them all, but I cheated. I took all of your newsletters and ran them and put them in a form, and then I ran and said, summarize for me what Russ talking about. And it actually said, these articles seem to be redundant. I said, wow, it's just rude, right? I do pay for the consumer version of ChatGPT. I think it's $20 a month, something like that. And I went and just got a ebook and started going through it, and it's actually useful for things. I also like to try to trick it to do certain things, and I sort of found a consistent way to trick it is by giving it the answer, right? And giving an answer mean I say something or you ask a question, is this the correct thing? Is this the right answer to this? And it goes through, and I'm not trying to break it, I'm just trying to see a couple of things on how
Oh, you can
do it up.
ask it a question and say in the response include this, and that will actually be part of. It's a
I
little
don't know if
hack.
it's tricking it. I think it's considering it. But did that, and the MDA stuff I want to talk about, and I'm shortening the acronym is really Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, but that's a mouthful, and nobody wants to say MDCA, so it's MDA, and it's interchangeable. For those that know the stat, and I'll tell you how. But we're gonna let Andrew kick the show off because she probably has the most pertinent stuff to talk. We're gonna
Well,
talk about certification, right?
She's the most sober right now because it's
She is
mid-January.
the most sober right now,
Yeah.
right? And sooner or later, she's gonna get tired of us, and I see her hair starting to go up. She's like, "Will they be quiet?" I get it. And so, what was I saying? I just had
Well,
a
by the
mental-
way, before you head down that route, Noodle has something that he needs to admit. He actually admitted today that, speaking of ChatGPT, he discontinued his license for OpenAI's ChatGPT today because of Copilot Pro.
Well, how much is Copilot Pro? It's the same thing, right? I think I have it. I'm not sure. How do you
Yeah,
get Copilot Pro? It's consumer, right? You can consume it.
That's
as-
the consumer. Yeah, you have it already, but yeah.
Okay, I outside of Microsoft, I pay for it because I'm really bill conscious this year. Right? I got a little uh, Chat GPT is excellent for doing your budget. Oh my God, you can take it, and I got to be careful with it because I'm not sure how this information is consumed. But if you can point it towards stuff like your PDFs from your credit card statements and stuff like that, it can parse it. And so
Yeah.
there's so many things on Reddit and YouTube are telling you how to do these things that make it useful for a consumer. It's actually pretty cool, and I saw it in real estate. But I think we need to
Yeah, we'll come back to
we need to make an episode purely about how do consumers use a relevant version of regenerative AI, right? Because we can talk about it from a technology standpoint, but if it's not helping you do this, and that in your house, it's just voodoo, right? But when I saw it create a budget spreadsheet based on some stuff that I told it to go look at, credit card statements, it's like it can come in and you can sort of give it an idea. So my first thought was, wow, these financial analysts are going to find themselves in trouble if they don't adopt this because you're not going to outdo it. So you have to use it so you can scale instead of having to be a manager with 5 people. You now have the ability to scale to 25 people because you got this thing in the back for it. But I think we sort of talked about this about 5 episodes ago. But I'm gonna go back to something that Noodle said. What is Copilot Pro? I'm gonna have a dove. I have no idea what that is.
We just announced that. So it's Copilot Pro for individuals. We just started talking about that yesterday. So that's what you have for your Office apps, essentially.
Oh, that's all the stuff that's showing up.
Yeah.
You and I talk. Oh, okay. Because you're right. It's
And it's
everywhere
like
now.
$20 per person per month or something like that, which is cheaper than OpenAI's ChatGPT Pro.
Okay, then I don't have it. I will talk about offline. Noodle,
Yeah,
thanks for educating me.
$20 per person. So Mike said it's for personal and family subscribers, $20 per person per month.
Well,
And this is consumer version. Yeah.
Something's happening because all of my personal computers with my login, I'm starting to see, the sort of tattletale icon, and it's in all my apps now. And the only app I haven't seen it manifest in is OneNote. Haven't seen
That's
the OneNote.
probably Copilot for M365, which is the thing that's in Word, Teams, Excel, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But today we said we were going to talk about 3 things. We're going to talk about Rod's AI tour. So Rod, maybe you can give us some details, dates, cities, all that kind of stuff. Thought we would talk about Edward's fascination with 2 new Defender for Cloud Apps features. And then if we have time, maybe talk about the latest Gartner report for endpoint protection.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. Right.
Oh, they did come out. I sort of told ChatGPT to summarize it for me. Oh my God, I'm becoming lazy. Someone's got to come turn me over here in a minute.
Edward GPT.
But Rod, tell us, Rod, when does the tour start? What kickoff date?
Oh, yeah, that silly tour thing. So I was in San Francisco next week. We already mentioned that just a little bit. Last week we had about 1,500 people at Moscone Center West. If you remember old Microsoft builds that were there, it was literally it was like the ghosts of past build attendees. It was just exactly the same, except it had Microsoft AI Tour signs and everything all over the place. Exactly the same, had the exact same feel. It was awesome. I think we ended up having last week about 1,500 people at Moscone Center it's a free event, right? So you sign up, you register if you're in the area. I thought this was interesting. So I delivered 2 security sessions last week, the only security sessions. One on the future of security of AI, and then also how to secure generative AI apps, or at least how we're doing it at Microsoft. There were people that had actually traveled from the East Coast, from places like Milwaukee, Houston, and things like this, to San Francisco to come to this free event. So it's a free event, no registration, get your badge, come in, do whatever you want. We supplied meals. We had an expo area, community area, and all that good kind of stuff. So it was a bona fide conference, super awesome. Like I said, about 1,500 people there from all over the place and both of my security sessions were filled up. And I thought that was, to me, I was super appreciative that people come into a kind of a primarily developer-centric conference are there also interested in the security piece, because there were several people I talked to that were there as developers, but they brought their security people along with them. I guess they maybe looked at the agenda beforehand. I don't know, but it was only 2 security sessions, but they were great. I talked about GitHub Advanced Security. I did demos of Security Copilot, which people were super interested in. Next week, I'll be in New York City to do the same thing. So next Thursday, which is, what is next Thursday's date? The 25th. Next Thursday, 25th, I'll be in New York City to do the same thing at Javits Center. I was super surprised, but we have 5,000 people registered for New York City. 5,000 people registered for New York City's free event. It's a free event. Free event. Come get food. Come sit in the front row and heckle me, and I'm okay with that, just as long as you come and listen to and talk about security for AI. Now, there's a bunch of upcoming additional dates. I was super scared initially because I was on track. They had me pegged to do the one in Bengaluru, which was like a week later, but somebody actually stepped up to do that one, so I don't have to do that. But I may actually, we'll see how it works out. There's March 13th is France. March 19th is Berlin, but then the following week I'll actually be in Denmark. So for sure. So I may do Paris and Berlin. I'm not positive, but I wouldn't mind doing that. But I love talking about all things AI and all things security, because it's a necessary evil, necessary discussion to have.
Necessary
I'm super happy.
evil.
Yeah.
When is evil ever necessary? And I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying when, so I know when to do it. Yeah, I was going to try to accompany you up to New York next week, City, and too much going on. It would burn me out trying to bounce between so and so. But yeah, 5,000 people, even for a free event.
5,000 people, and it's exact same agenda, exact same schedule. So my guess is these rooms are going to be massive. Another cool thing about next week, which I thought was super awesome, couple good buddies of mine, Mark Rusinovich and Corey Sanders will be there, but also Satya is giving the keynote.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
Look at that. Satya is
So
going
if
to
you
do
miss
it.
that, oh my goodness, this is the best. This is the best one. All the other ones are just pale in comparison. So
Okay. Well, that sounds like a thing. What was the other thing you were going to talk about? We'll flip over. Andrew, you're next, or you want me to go to next? Andrew?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Oh, I'm whispering. You next, or you want me to go next?
No, I mean, why don't you go ahead and talk about I think you're more excited about it. I just thought it was something we probably ought to talk about, but you seem excited about talking about yours.
I am, because for those who listen to the show for any significant amount of time, I am a huge fan of Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, previously known as Microsoft Cloud App Security, previously known as the company that Microsoft acquired, Edelon. So it is a CASB. The C can be interchangeable. I've heard it called from, client access security broker or cloud app security broker or whatever it may be. It is a tool or technology that looks at the way users interact with applications and in some form or fashion how that data is interacting with the identity that is used in the application. So think of something that you can put based on the identity that can look at what application is, primarily SaaS, but there are some traditional for lack of a better word, fat applications, right? They're not maybe based in the cloud. They're installed on these things, but they may talk to a cloud backend, so you can sort of expect it. If it has an API, then Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, you can probably see it. So I was going through this. Someone asked me about some data governance stuff, and I said, "Well, I'm not super strong on that." I went into it, but one thing that I noticed, and so now I'm sort of disappointed because I read it from a LinkedIn post for a guy named Marco Loren. We're trying to get him on the show. Marco, if you're listening, I sent you a LinkedIn request. We got to get you on the show this year. His screenshots don't match up to my portal, and I can't see it. But what it is, and I was going to share my screen, is that now, if you're familiar with the way Cloud App Security works, you install it. It's an E5 SKU from Microsoft, part of the security workload. I believe it is part of the threat side of the E5 security SKU being the license. And what it does once you install it is tenant aware. So it looks at what your verified identities that are logging into Entra ID are doing within that subscription/tenant. Think that someone logs in on a computer or a mobile device and they go to LinkedIn or Tinder or whatever, Google. You can see that activity. Now, you can't really intercept that activity and decode it of a sort, but you can actually see trends and things along that line. Its strength is it can look at certain activities that may be precursors to ransomware attacks, exfiltration of data past a certain amount of upload versus download. Someone downloading 4 gigabytes in an hour, no big deal. Someone uploading 4 gigabytes in an hour, someone's copying your data out before they sell it back to you, right? With a key to unlock it. But one of the things I noticed that when you go in there, this is the biggest capability I've ever seen introduced into this. There are now detections for over 400 AI apps.
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah.
did not know that. And some of the
Mhm.
names, I was just going through the names now, like, I don't even know. They do what? They do what? And now the true inspection of what the AI application is doing is not manifested. It's not out there. But what it does, it'll give you a good subset. Because think about this. The initial thing that I used to hop on this for years ago that I liked it because it could detect shadow IT. Shadow IT is unsanctioned, technology that may or may not be running your line of business organization. I don't think we really talked about that. These AI technologies are shadow IT. They are unsanctioned by the organization because anyone can go buy a Copilot Pro within your organization, and think how many organizations really don't have, mobile app management or what Intune does to protect that. And so you see, you have it in yours, man. Yours looks so
I was just bringing mine up, Ron. You beat me.
Look at all those. I mean, 419. Some of the AI stuff exists in some of the other apps too, but 419 generative AI stuff. That's.
Let me see. Where are you? You in a Cloud App catalog, and I was in the
Cloud App catalog. Yeah, and then just search for AI. Yeah, all the generative AI stuff comes up.
But for those who aren't as familiar with Defender for Cloud Apps, we also rank all of those discovered apps on a 10-point scale. 10 being the best. And if you look in
The
here
best.
of
It's
these
cool.
400, of these 419 AI apps, I mean, we've got one ranked at a 1, quite a few ranked at 2. And that definitely means they're not secure, right? They don't support SOC or FISMA, any of those, ISO 27001, right? No FedRAMP, those kinds of things. So very insecure.
Yeah. And so whatever you did, it sparked an idea. So I went back to security.microsoft.com, went into it, and I see it. Because remember, my tenant got enrolled into the
Oh, right. The Defender stuff.
and I don't know why I did it, but when I went to the old one, now I see it. Because even of course, the OpenAI API and ChatGPT are 8 and a 9.
So here's something I'm curious about if either of you have any suggestions or recommendations. I think personally, obviously you want to make the ones unsanctioned that are unsafe that you are aware of, but what about all the other ones? I want to know when people are using these things. So I generally just select monitored,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Across the board.
Mhm.
I mean, is that okay? Or do you have to go in and say sanction? I want to know when they use it no matter what, because that allows me to create reports based on a generative AI utilization.
Well, you won't monitor it because if you put sanctioned, you lower the inspection criteria on the back end heuristics of saying, I'm not going to look at
Yeah.
this as closely. You put monitor it. I like monitor it because if you click on it and then you go to some of the configurations with monitor, you can make it pop up a banner. You are using an unauthorized app or unsanctioned app, right? And we're going to allow you to pass through, right? So that's what I like about it. Now, if you put unsanctioned, you're basically saying block it.
Okay.
Now you can block it with conditions, but I find that it doesn't work really well. So monitor allows you to see who is actually doing it. I think if you go in and you put sanction, you lose a little bit of inspection on it.
Does it change the score then, I guess?
No, it doesn't change the score. The score
No.
is subjective
Well, you can
because
override the score, but
you
yeah.
can override the score. You can submit a request to override the score, right? This is one of the more busy and time-consuming things. I've known the history about this app because a lot of the people who maintain this have to go out and look at these individual things. And so I don't know the work, the lift, like Google Bard. Google Bard is a 10. Now, who ranked it a 10? I don't know. Maybe it's a 10 because it meets all of the external
Well,
controls out there.
we can't use it, so I don't know.
I see something called Google Dialogflow. Dialogflow. I mean, we need to get some people with some naming capabilities of marketing. That's horrible. And so what would give something a 10? And then we'll move on to the next thing. So Google Bard is a 10. And as Andrea said, 10 being the best, 1 means horrible. So let's see some of the criteria to be a 10. It has an 8 in general, say it was founded in 1998 and so and so. So the general means that this person or this entity has given them much public domain information about itself. When it was founded, what's the top level domain? Does it have disaster recovery plan? So if you're selling service, it comes up. URL is not being spoofed and stuff like that. Somebody sharing their screen. I don't know who's doing that.
That's me again.
Okay.
Sorry.
So if you come down to the security, it has a 10. It has a user audit trail, valid certificate name, requires user authentication, remember password. I don't know why remember password would be a condition for a green check mark. Support SAML. All of these seem to have the Heartbleed thing patch, and that's probably because the back end is running Linux or something. It's running Linux.
What's the one
Multi-factor.
you're looking at? Oh, Diagflow. Oh, okay. Or Dialog.
Actually, I'm looking at Bard.
Oh, you are looking at Bard. Okay.
She's a 10. And so as I go through that, okay, so you have 8 and 10. My math is not that good. 8 and 10, add them together, you get 18 divided by 2. That's not a perfect 10. So I don't know where you're coming from. So you got a compliance. So it's looking at those things like HIPAA, SOC 2, SASE 16, GLBA, which is finance related, SOX, ITAR. If you don't know what ITAR is, that's you're dealing with military grade munitions. You deal with weapons and weapons technology. COPA and things along that line. So it has a 10, legal, data ownership, GDPR, of course. And so if I take 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 8, that's 38, I had to get a 10. So I think that it's a
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
gamifying the results, right?
So you could literally get a 10 in legal, but a 1 in everything else and still get a 10.
I don't know. But you know, we always knew that these numbers were dubious at best. So that's one of the things I was excited about seeing. And it sounds like you guys had already seen it. I just haven't had time to really work in it. And I'm like, this is cool. Now, what it needs to do, there are no conditional app connectors for it, meaning I can control the sessions, right? I can break a session. I can do these things in it. So when you add it to it, if that API is not exposed where you can do it, it may not work. So scroll down, you won't see them.
Hmm.
Meaning I can't control the session of that. Now you
Yeah.
can sort of go in manually, but I found out with stuff like Google Suite, G Suite, Google this, Google that, Google those API endpoints, so that when the cloud app the CASB doesn't know about it, it can't broker the session. So if you type in BARD, you're just not going to get anything.
No.
Yeah. So these are the ones that either are frenemies with Microsoft or who have supplied that API endpoint condition so that you can do it. Oh, it's there.
Is there?
Maybe I'm wrong. There you go. So if you start Wizard, let's see.
Maybe it's not in the list, but it is searchable.
It
Yeah,
could
'cause
be
this-
something that it could be an app you've registered as well, but our good friend here, Louisville Systems Jockey, also explains that you can customize the weight of each category, which will change the overall score per your customization. Thank you, Louisville.
And thank you. He or she is absolutely correct. Right. So I like that piece. The other thing that I saw was that Defender for Cloud Apps and enhanced SASE and posture management. So it talks about some of the major players that are using applications that are almost primarily SASE based, and they're the big boys. Atlassian, they've improved Dropbox, NetDocuments, Workplace, Zendesk. So those things are coming in and being considered in it, and I haven't really played it in that while, and that makes sense because I remember the old heads would be Salesforce, MuleSoft, ADP, and a few others. But now you're seeing that this is expanding out, and that has to be with a few things. That's supply chain management vulnerability,
yeah.
DevOps vulnerability, whether it be
Dependencies.
Git.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're looking at those things right now, so that if I can break your CRM and your ERP, that's worse than a whole lot of stuff. If I start messing around with your PO system and start messing around with your payroll system and doing these things, I could cause you so much headache by saying, well, I'm not going to charge any of your employees taxes this pay period. I know that's the extreme. A real life touch would be, I can do what someone did to SolarWinds. That would be bad, right? And I don't see SolarWinds in that list for some reason, but my
So-
environment is messed up.
So the SolarWinds, the supply chain management, I talk about that at the AI tour, which
Mhm.
it's funny. I talk about it at the AI tour, but it's just enable GitHub Advanced Security, and the Dependabot actually goes through and looks for the dependencies and creates alerts, automatically creates alerts in GitHub that can get sent to Sentinel that say, hey, your dependencies are mismatched or out of date, or we checked against this national security database and you need to update.
Yeah, and redundant top level certificates are seen to be coming back popular as attack mechanisms, right?
Yeah.
Because the attackers are not attacking the actual security of a signed certificate, top level root, or whatever it may be. They are spoofing it, parsing it, and waiting on the laziness. You've seen this when email pops up. We cannot confirm the legitimacy of the certificate of this service provider. It always happens in hotels, right? When you get on the Wi-Fi or something. So that's the thing. Those are the two things, and I think it's just because I haven't really played in, MDA in a while, and I'm like, oh my God, you can step away and because remember, it wasn't getting any attention. I had thought Microsoft was abandoning the product, but I also found out when I was in Houston last year that this is a big player in the SASE thing, the SASE, Secure Access Secure Edge.
Yeah.
Watch what it does in the next quarter or so. I'm like, oh, that's what's going on. Now, is it going to be something that competes against Zscaler ZPA or CPA and ZIA maybe? I'm not sure. I know ZPA. We'll see. But those are two things I want to talk about, and I'll be quiet. Oh, one other thing. In the thing that we talked about last year, I did not realize how important that if you look at old Microsoft things, it still say MCAS. How important that this detection is in for business email compromise,
Mm.
AITM, and session hijacking and token theft. It, that's one of the things, of the detection mechanism that's high up on the list. So when you see the requirements, it says you have to do that. So you can't get automatic attack disruption within XDR unless you have this deployed and configured to a certain level. And by that, I mean Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. So I sort of went down a rabbit hole, fell back in love with it. So it's my favorite again.
Yeah. So should the AITM, should we change that acronym now that AI is a thing? Instead of AI in the middle, it's
Let me just
Andrew,
say that I will just say when it comes to initials or acronyms,
Yeah.
my initials are AF, and the initials AF are now used in a very, very different way. So I think adversary in the middle
yeah.
can if I can survive mine, adversary in the middle can survive it. Theirs.
I happen to love the initials AF. I love them. Anyway, we're a rated PG show. AF. Yeah, my initials are slightly useless. So, but hey,
Should we let Brody say hi real quick?
Yes.
hey,
Brody.
hello, Brody.
Hey everyone, how are you?
Well, sir.
Good.
Excellent. I hope I'm coming through okay.
It sounds
I'm on a
really
very-
good. It's probably the best ever. Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like you've completed puberty. You got bass in your voice all of a sudden. What's going
Yeah.
on, Brody?
That's what happens
Perfect.
when you have kids, right? You turn into an adult.
I am learning that. Yes, I'm learning that. I'll try to let's see if I can go on camera for a second. I'm just in a poorly
All right.
connected environment, but it's
You're
good
going
to
to show us
see
that
all
you're
of you.
at a customer site and you have a suit on. How about that? Everybody can picture it.
Yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
Just StreamYard itself wants to crash when I go into the camera menu, so we're just gonna leave the camera off today. Yeah. But
Yeah.
that's
I'm happy to be here. Good conversation. I didn't know about I didn't even think to list the AI apps in Defender for Cloud Apps. That was actually a really good idea. I just totally didn't think about that. And the fact there's
didn't know it was
400
there.
is hilarious. Yeah,
Yeah,
it totally makes sense.
400
I'm like, oh wow.
419, and Rod has them all monitored in his, so I need to probably go do it. Can you
Yes, I do.
Can you mass?
Yeah.
You okay? That was that was a feature request that you couldn't mass select monitor sanctioned and unsanctioned because you could inadvertently unsanction all your apps. So I guess that fear of doing that.
Yeah. See, I use that to create reports that show actual usage of generative AI versus just trying to shut it down.
Because when you run the executive report, go to settings, come down to executive report, it's actually nice eye candy for the bean counters and the C-suite, right? It's actually pretty good.
And imagine when Security Copilot or Copilot for Security is available, then there might be something.
Which one is it, Andrew? Which one is it?
It is Copilot for Security. No, it is. Just like Defender for Endpoint. Defender for Endpoint is like Copilot for Security, or Copilot for GitHub, or Copilot for M365. So.
Endpoint for defenders. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I get it.
That's another AF. Yeah.
So what are we doing now? Andrea, you wanted to talk over. So we talked about that. We did that. I forget the agenda you had together. What was the next thing we were going to talk about?
We were going to
We
talk
won an award.
about the new Gartner Defender Endpoint Protection Report that came out.
All right. So what did Gartner have to say?
Well, we are once again in the upper right-hand quadrant, which if for people who aren't familiar, and I assume everyone here is, but I always feel like we need to explain what things are, right? Gartner is what do we want to call it? A think tank, that independent agency.
It's a service that businesses pay lots and lots of money to, where they could just ask me a few questions. I'd tell them what they need to do with their business.
Well, that is true. They give all kinds of advice on everything from like top 10 AI trends for 2024, but they also will do some rankings. And there are 4 quadrants: leaders, challengers, niche players, and visionaries. We're in the upper right, which is the leaders quadrant, along with CrowdStrike, Trend Micro, SentinelOne, Palo Networks, and Sophos. And this is for the endpoint protection platform, which most of us would call EDR, right? Endpoint detection and response. We're calling ours XDR, but
You know, I don't throw a lot into Gartner, Forrester, IDP. I realize that the expertise is recognized and appreciated. You know, it's if you read the fine print, some of these things are sponsored, some of them not, and everything else. And while you read that, the problem that Microsoft had early on, that they were not scoring as high as some of these other products, because we had so many products and you didn't know where they straddled. I sort of look at it, yeah, if you look at Elite's CrowdStrike, and is that because it's more concise and not as broad in an offering as Microsoft? And that may be it. It No shade on CrowdStrike. They make a great product. We had a real long discussion with some peers today. And I'm like, it's a wash. It really is. You put these 2 heavyweights in a ring, you tell them to fight 5 times. Somebody's going to get 3 one time out of 5. And next time you go and they take a few months off and fight again, someone's going to get 3. So I get it. The ones that strike me that make me interested is like, I like to go understand what Sophos is doing, what Trend Micro is doing, right? Because those don't not really resonate for those who've been of age to be security players. They were point solutions. I always thought Sophos was just AV, and Trend Micro. They got into the big boy game when they started putting inspection on a card that went into the Cisco ASA, so you can inspect traffic with their product on the Cisco ASA years ago, and a few other things. So I like looking at those. It had. Did that thing say Bitwarden was on there?
Bitdefender.
Bitdefender. So that shows a couple things. There's still space to compete. You know, let the big boys fight it out, and you rise from the ruins of all that's going on. And I'm surprised. I'm trying to bring the mind's eye up what you shared on the screen. Was Fortinet in there?
Fortinet is in the lower left under niche player.
Yeah, because they can't decide what they want to do. Palo Alto, I'm surprised they're so low, relatively let, because in my humble opinion, they to me seem to be the more serious contender who could absolutely catch you in a final 30-yard sprint and 30-meter sprint.
Yeah.
They get it. They really get it.
I see Checkpoint Software, and I think I'm back in the 90s.
Your shirt says you are, but anyway, Checkpoint, man, that's my first firewall of enterprise firewall. I cut my teeth on it.
Yeah, they've been around for a while, and well, that's kind of relevant as well because they're still in the hunt, somewhat.
No pun intended. And I remember Checkpoint could not be used in the United States because it was a foreign entity.
Yeah, that's right.
You could not use it in government entities. It's as far as I know, still an Israeli company, right?
Well, I will say, Edward, when you were saying you never put a lot of weight into the Gartner Magic Quadrant, before I was at Microsoft, I came from a financial services company, and we were all Magic Quadrant. If it was in the upper right-hand corner, we were going to buy it. And there are still lots of folks out there who are very interested in it.
Well, who's their competitor? Is it Forrester or somebody else these days?
I would say Forrester is probably the closest, but I think what Edward is saying, he doesn't pay attention to any of those, right? He doesn't care about rankings, but there are lots of people out there who do.
Oh, they do, absolutely,
and they do. They have to have something to pivot against to justify and validate the answer. And I don't want to say it in a way that it implies they don't have value. I agree, but and Rob, you should be more I don't know whose side you're on, but back in the day when we had the magazine, when you had to read it, remember they had publications you bought, and they were expensive. Yeah, big old books.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you didn't. You and I been around when we were still using Etch a Sketch, right, to draw out the socks.
I read Computer Shopper religiously every week. That big
Yes,
thick-
Computer
yeah.
Shopper. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm old. And so we would go in. If you read the fine print, they would tell you who the authors, who the contributors, who what's the word I'm looking for, who sanctioned this or patron the discovery, right? So it's sort of funny. I think the other player is IDT, and I could have swore, Rod, if I me doing research on you, that you was a contributor to IDT back in the day.
I was.
Uh-huh. And so there you go. And I started looking around. I said, okay, I don't know what happened to it, but I remember that thing. Now
Yeah.
it does have value to let you know who is trying to stay competitive and stay relevant in the market. But it's a thing. I get it. You got to put it in there, and you go from it. But they want to act like they're agencies like MITRE and then MITRE.org. They're two different things. People don't know. MITRE Attack is not the same thing as MITRE Art. One's for profit, one's not for profit. You do different things. Um, and they come in and they already. I think my reluctance to really buy in 100% is a lot of times it's a paid subscription, and people that pay that super ultra premium thing can request. And I've been in one of those rooms where someone would the CIO would say, "I want you to give me a comprehensive doing this, blah 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 blah, because I need to make a decision to do this." And what happens? That leader tips his hand, and the hand tipping goes, "I need to know whether to buy CrowdStrike or not." You basically sit here and took the Azure equation and said, should I buy CrowdStrike or not? So you sort of imply that I want to buy it, but I need you to dissuade me from buying it or confirm that I do want to buy it, right? So that's my thing with it. But a lot of the writers in there I respect. I happen to knew a couple of them. I met them. They do their research. It's all right. So I don't want anybody from Gartner critiquing our show.
So there's Gardner, Forrester, decisions on Microsoft, right? You're familiar with those?
I mean,
Still do that? They still do
Are
that?
they still around? I don't think they're still around.
They are. My good buddy Mary Jo Foley works for them.
Mary Jo. Shout out Mary Jo. Get her on.
She's not at. I didn't realize she'd left the magazine or the.
Oh yeah, she's
wherever she
been-
was.
Yep, she's been gone there from there for a while.
Well, I ain't talked to Mary Jo in a gazillion years. I forgot what I met her at. She funny.
I will say that, I mean, I think one of the values that people see in any of these, right, is, no one ever got fired for picking something that was in the upper right-hand quadrant, right?
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Let's talk about subjective rankings and validation. I think we're going to talk about certifications. So, at the urging of one of the originators of this podcast, Frank Grimberg, he said, "Hey Ed, if you really want to sit here and test your skills and apply your trade and really put yourself in a good position to understand what true endpoint forensics is, you need to take the SANS course 508 for certified endpoint forensic analyst, GFCFA. Yeah, it is the 508 exam, SEC 508, or either FOR 508. One of the two, I can't remember. I got the books over there. And the normal language for the course is called Hunt Evil. And I think Andrea and you and I talked about this years ago. And the posters are pretty cool. When I tell you that course is hard, I blow through certifications like I drink beer. 2 swallows, I'm done. It's hard. And I am having to unlearn a lot of bad things about how I've gone about my business. Is that a good thing? Yes, because now it makes you be very agnostic and autonomous to how you go about responding. It makes it so you should be able to respond to a forensics request, whether they're running MDE, CS, Sentinel-1, Carbon Black, whatever it is. There's a set of processes. And I will be very humble on the show to say, you think you know it, but you don't. If you don't do it every day, you don't. And the muscle memory is not there. I was overwhelmed at first, but now I get it. Once you get the VMs up and you start playing around, you now I can leverage some of the stuff. What did Andrew say? Almost sounds dirty.
Look what Brody said. Oh my
What did Brody
goodness.
say? I can't. Somebody put us full screen. Oh, I put full screen.
I'm not putting it in on the screen. No, this is a family show.
Woo. Anyway. I know, and so
Oh my goodness.
but you're right. Mm-hmm. Red Cup Security.
Red Cup.
I recommend anybody that wants to have an external validation of their skill set outside the primary tool and resource that they do. And I got my thing about SANS too. That stuff is super expensive. I can't understand the return on value. I'm not gonna lie. This course is $8,000, including the exam. So I'm incentivized to make sure I don't mess this up. And plus Frank is watching me.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is my accountability partner.
Is he going to pay for it if you pass it the first time?
He'll buy me lunch
And then not show up.
and not show up. You gotta be a listener of the show to understand the joke. He calls me every day. Have you studied? Have you done this?
Yeah.
So I really have gone through it and going, and I'm like, yeah. Is it worth that? You gotta be careful with this. If you sit in person, I know for a fact it is. I've set one in person. They had an empty seat. The guy let me sit in DC because I happen to be in the same hotel. He said, you can't officially take the course. I'll put you on a team. That's how I got introduced to Net Wars. This was a while back. Yes, the people there are super knowledgeable. I'm doing the on-demand course. I'm doing it at my pace and leisure. You got to be serious about it, and plus, the passing score is public knowledge, so I'm not about to disqualify myself. I think passing is 70%. Frank wants me to score a 90. You can score 90 because then you get this special designation. For those who've taken it, they know. So I'm really trying to do that. That's my professional goals. I think we talked about the show. But let's go back to certifications. I think certifications now are going to have to take a huge relook at themselves because, now you're having to find who are the experts to be able to write certifications for AI. Right? And how do you do it? Because AI to me seems super developer centric.
It's developer centric. Plus, most of it's all open source, and I don't know if there's going to be any organization that puts any effort behind it anytime soon for a centralized general
I
certification.
wonder, I'm sorry to interrupt, Ron. I just wonder, since we're already getting close to time, it'd probably be great for us to devote a whole show to the different kinds of certifications. Like Edward, you gave a brief update of what a SANS course is like, but we could talk about SANS. We could talk about the Microsoft certifications. We could talk about what's the CISSP, if anybody has one of those, or if we can have a guest come on and talk about that certification. What
That'd
is
be great.
certifications we need? Do we need certifications? So that might be a fun thing for us to just spend some time on.
I think that's an excellent idea. I think we sort of as an
We
internal.
talked about it and just sort of slid away.
I think we need to because we had Asif early in the evolution of this show.
Yeah.
Helping prepare for the SC200 and a few others. Frank obviously does work with content and test creation. I think we should really have a show about it to ask it a couple of ways, and it probably needs to be a two-part show. One show is how you prepare, stuff like that, study methods. Other ones would be, do you think it's worth it? How can you get return on value? Rod, myself, and Andrea are old enough to know that back in the day, if you had MCSE behind your name,
Yep.
you were the thing.
Yep.
Period. I came up that route a little bit later. I started on it and then I veered off and went the networking route. And my goal was CCIE. So CCNA, CCNP, and all that. So I went that route and then came back to the Microsoft front. And if you had a CCIE back in the day, you walk on water.
Well, I'm from even prior to that. It was C&E when I started out.
I had my CNE, certified Novell engineer for 3.1 and 4. And
Yep,
and even then that carried away. And then you started seeing obscure certifications.
like IBM Warp. I did
I
that
think
one.
we should save this for the certification.
Let's say it for the certification.
All right, yeah, we're with you.
And I have a lot of visual cues. I've saved every certificate for every certification I ever got. Stack. So let's go.
Hey,
All right.
we do have one before we go. We do have one, I think, landmine audience question. If anybody wants to supply this one. Speaking of the report, we were talking about the Gartner report earlier. Does anyone have any recommendation for an organization that uses CrowdStrike as a primary and MDE in passive?
Andrew
Yes.
is deeper on me, so she has seniority. She gets to go.
I would say I'll ask two questions because sometimes people mean I have Defender for Endpoint installed and I'm not having it take an automated action. That's what they mean when they say passive. And sometimes they mean I have Defender AV in passive mode. And those are two different things. Certainly, if we're talking about the Defender for Endpoint part of it, you might have to do some whitelisting on both sides to make sure that no one's interfering with each other. But I would definitely, I would have tamper protection turned on inside MDE so that if for some reason CrowdStrike doesn't catch something, we have the ability to swoop in behind and catch it. And honestly, having MDE in, we'll call it that, with automation turned off, still gives us the ability to use threat analytics. You can still use web content filtering to block things like pornography, things like that, right? You can still take advantage of the vulnerability management. So all of those additional features that you get from having Defender for Endpoint without automation make it super sweet.
Yeah. I'm of the same opinion as Andrew, and I recently had to encounter this with a customer. This customer, and Andrew is the wordsmith and certified author in the group. What's the term for having more than one partner in the marriage? Polygamy, whatever that is. I'm starting to see that in IT, where people are running dual solutions, dual providers, and all that. I sort of talked about it a couple of years ago, where I called it TBV, trust but verify situations, and now people are getting better at budget. So let's go back to what the question is. I've seen it in action. I asked the customer why, and they said we want CrowdStrike as our primary EDR, and he said an odd thing. We still want Defender AV because it does a better job. I'm like, really? Yes. And so when the customer said that, I said, well, give me a little context. Context was they've always done it that way. Prior to that, they were running a EDR solution by the company Google bought, Mandarin, and then they were MDE, then got rid of that, made MDE primary, and then CrowdStrike. So CrowdStrike this. So they were trying to solve a problem, and I think what he was trying to get to is the CrowdStrike solution is not embedded into the OS. It's not into the genetics of it. And they like the way it handled it better than that, but they liked it. So I think you're starting to seeing that thing where you're starting to see that. And I wanted to come in on what Andrea said. People really gravitate toward what's in that upper right corner and they live by it. And what that did was it coined the term best of breed. So everybody started going to best of breed, right? And so you're starting to see now, one thing that I started liking to say when I was doing my Sentinel days, best of use case. What is the best use case for you, Mr. Customer? That's the thing you need to really look about. So my opinion is what is best for your security initiative and operation that will not burn out your people. You do not want to bounce between that. I don't think there'll ever be that synergy between the competitors to make it easy for either one. So that's where partners and innovators come in and say, I'll make the single pane of glass for you, because they're never going to get along, right? And do that.
You also wonder why, you would implement two when they do something very similar. Obviously, maybe it's a contract thing, right? Because there's obviously some value that someone's seen somewhere, but there's also the cost of maintaining
I'll
two
say-
separate things. Yep.
A lot of times, though, people get MBE as part of an E5 purchase,
Gotcha. Right.
so they have it for free, so they
Mhm.
might as well implement
Yeah.
it.
And the number two, that could be number one at any time, mergers and acquisitions. We inherit it.
Right.
That's true.
We inherit it. We cannot get rid of it. We just got to use this. And so the customer gets very innovative on how to mitigate or work between both of them without burning out their people. Because you're gonna have people who are going to say, hey, this is, and move between either one of them. That is not a light lift endeavor. It just isn't. Right.
I'll
Well, and I
say-
think even just past EDRs, to Andrea's point, we need organizations to reduce the amount of tooling and have better integration between smaller sets instead of a sprawl of tools, which is hard to manage and not fully utilized. Not only is it a money waster, it's a resource waster and tons of technical debt.
And you and I, Brody, super agree on this. Because we're talking about that type of situation creates another security risk, which is called attrition. People get fed up and they leave. You want me to know all these tools? I'm burned. And then, even if it's not an attrition on a single individual, you got so many teams, you can't pay all these people, right? If you are really good, you're going to get paid well. You cannot. It's expensive to pay that. And then the risk is, how do you keep Andrea happy? How do you keep Brody happy? How do you keep Ed happy? This and that. And you saw the rush to pay these outlandish salaries and all this other stuff. And so what happens is you lose a single linchpin individual in your organization, and all that tribal knowledge and all that stuff, it goes away. That is you hear these CISOs talking about what keep them up at night. What would keep me up at night is someone sends me an email at 6 o'clock on Friday and saying, hey, by the way, it's not you, it's me. And you're done. And they leave, right? So that's good. But hey, we're taking some great things out of the show. We're at time. We are going to have a 2-part series about certifications. We're going to talk about path, study, preparation, and desire. And then we're going to talk about a subjective topic. Is it worth it? And how do you measure worth? Because I don't think corporations are paying for the letters behind your name the way they used to. Remember, it went away from college degrees. You had all this and went to this, and now they sort of swinging, and now you sort of, and then I'm losing the effect because nobody's really watching me. We only have people do it, but I'm going side to side.
MCSEs. Yeah.
Paper NCFC. It's a column. Paper tigers.
Yep.
Right. So, but anyway, everyone, I forget who the guest is next week. I guess I should know, but I don't. But we will. We will put together.
promised to have a guest next week. I know you guys are tired of us.
Yeah, we will put together a 2-part
Correct.
series on the show around certification, the want, the need, the value, and the who. And we'll go from there.
Parav is next week, by the way, with his deciphering UAL stuff.
Oh yeah, Parav. Big shout out, Parav. And I'm going to sit down here and take that term for having more than one person in your marriage, polygarism or whatever it is. And I'm going to go, is this the new trend that organizations are using multiple products? So to the gentleman that raised that question, you gave me an idea to go and come up with the show topic. Elazar, you're right. People are blending technologies now, but they're trying to see, and it's not necessarily the best of breed. They're going with a trust but verify posture. I believe you, but I don't believe you. I don't believe you. So we'll see. All right. At 6:07 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we'd like to say goodbye. Thanks to all our listeners, our viewers, our supporters. We're going to have a great 2024. We're going to get some of these shows. For those who want to come on the show and talk about their certification experience, Brody is our Discard manager. So pop some on that and then just send us an email and we'll get you on the show. We love to hear your certification experience and your experience about trying to apply that certification to make your condition or your station in life better. Right? We'll see. Thanks everybody for the show.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Next week.